All right, today has been a very crazy day, but today was the first day that I learned about a man named Jason Gerhard. I'm going to tell you how I learned about him and what I have learned about him so far, and I expect to learn more about him. The picture that you're looking at is Jason Gerhard. Let me see if I can find on the left. He's got the red circle. And this is top right. You got the 4-minute at the top, and so at the top left, it's Jason Gerhard. To the right of him is a man named Sereno Gonzalez. To the right of him is Ed Brown. And to the right of him is Luke Rudowski. And many of you may know Luke Rudowski from We Are Change. We've met Luke Rudowski. He even spent the night at our house, and my wife, I think, talks to Luke Rudowski on Facebook and such, and we have a lot of respect for Luke Rudowski. Okay, so how did I learn about Jason Gerhard? He's the man in the blue staff shirt on the far left. Okay, I sent an email to Ed Brown, which many of you guys know I've started a Core Links email with Ed Brown, and here's what I said. Hello, Mr. Brown. I did receive your first letter and took 28 minutes to read it into YouTube as well as showed your artwork. It contained a 4-page letter, a photo of yourself and Miss Brown, Fast and Furious artwork, Hawk and Mouse artwork, Tank and Puppy artwork, administrative and public notice, U.S. Constitution Rangers and badge artwork, and a Concord, New Hampshire newspaper clipping. All was read into YouTube, and I asked others to investigate your case and watch Freedom to Fascism by Aaron Russo. I also recently learned of Daniel Riley and asked him to investigate his case as well. And then I give him the name and the location of the YouTube video, even though I know he cannot go to YouTube video. I wanted him to know about it anyway. I continued to write, as we continue on this journey, Mr. Brown, I think the public wants to hear what you have to say. You should know that I am not associated with any mainstream media, nor do I make any money from these efforts. We are motivated by Hebrews 13:3 and the love of our Father in heaven and his children who have been unjustly targeted by criminals, praying for you, Aaron and Rudy, and then I give my phone number. Okay, Mr. Brown wrote me back on Core Links. Here's what he had to say. Hello, Aaron and Mr. Davis. You are a breath of fresh air. You have done exactly as I wished you would. There is also a Jason Gerhard. I'm like, wow. There's somebody else I gotta check out that I don't know for sure, and I don't make claims on guilt or innocence when I haven't investigated the issue more than a day, and I just found out about him this morning. But Jason Gerhard certainly seems to be somebody that I want to check out. Okay, he says, there is also a Jason Gerhard unlawfully held. You have permission to copy and distribute all of my works, and thank you. I am going through the Jekyll Island like a starving man. I sent him a copy of the book, The Creature from Jekyll Island by G. Edward Griffin, which exposes the Federal Reserve. Like a starving man, refreshing my understanding of the major fraud against the United States. This is what the court denied Elaine and I in court. The court knew we had them for misprison of felony and treason for real. Are you at liberty to tell me what the agents wanted? I told Mr. Brown that I was visited by U.S. Marshals and the FBI. I'm an investigator, and I have been trying to get them to investigate attempted murder, torture, and abuse charges against specific personnel of the Bureau of Prisons for 8 different incidences at other locations than here. Give the interested all my letters and information. I only speak the truth and am obligated to press forward wherever I find criminal element in government. Commander Edward Lewis Brown, U.S. Constitutional Rangers, 1777. Okay, well, he told me about this new guy named Jason Gerhard. Keep in mind, I just recently found out about Danny Riley. And that's like, it's like, it's overwhelming, right? But we just got to keep pressing forward. We'll investigate each of these as we have time. I think someone once said, the whole world's on fire. We have one bucket of water. But through the Lord, all things are possible, and we'll just continue to trust in the Lord. So if you look up Jason Gerhard, Edward Brown on your favorite search engine, you will find a wiki page on Ed and Elaine Brown. If you search for the word Jason Gerhard on that page, I came into this paragraph. It says, on July the 17th of 2007, a Chevrolet Blazer sport utility vehicle owned by Elaine Brown is seized by the United States Marshal after the SUV is involved in a traffic accident in which a 17-year-old girl was injured and her Chrysler Concorde sedan totaled. The driver of the SUV was identified as Jason Gerhard of Brookhaven, New York. According to the girl's mother, Judy Dunham, Gerhard did not immediately stop and after returning to the scene of the accident, refused to provide his personal information to the 17-year-old girl. During his daily internet radio broadcast, Ed Brown confirmed that a friend had been using Elaine Brown's vehicle to go buy food. U.S. Marshal Stephen Monier confirmed that the vehicle had been impounded and that he was investigating the circumstances of the incident. Okay, so that's what Wikipedia says. I also call Wikipedia Wickedpedia because they were so biased against Ken Hovind, they showed their true colors there. If you also continue to search this article for Jason Gerhard, it says 4 individuals who assisted Ed and Elaine Brown in the standoff were convicted in connection with the matter. Danny Riley, which we know about Danny Riley now, of Cohoes, New York, was sentenced to 36 years in federal prison. 36 years, my God. After having convicted of helping to supply the Browns and of stockpiling weapons and threatening law enforcement officials. Riley was convicted of conspiracy, aiding and abetting, and using guns and bombs in connection with the standoff. Also convicted in other trials were Jason Gerhard, which is the subject of this video, of Brookhaven, New York, sentenced to 20 years in prison. 20 years in prison, my. Sereno Gonzalez of Alice, Texas, who I believe is the other individual in this picture, sentenced to 8 years in prison. Wow. I got to see if he's still in prison. And Robert Wolf of Randolph, Vermont, who was sentenced to 2.5 years. My. That is quite a long time to be put in prison. All right, so that's what's on Wikipedia. Again, I refer to Wikipedia because I don't trust anything Wikipedia says because I know how they did Ken Hovind. So not only that, but I found a couple of letters that supposedly were written by Jason Gerhard that'll give us an idea of his mindset. I wanted to read those letters into this video. And the first letter is on pacifism. Okay? And it's very possible that these letters have been edited by people that don't like Jason Gerhard, although I have no reason to think they have. I mean, I'm kind of thinking these are actual letters from Jason Gerhard. How they got to be on the internet and these particular websites, I don't know. But what I probably will do is I'll print off these letters and I'll mail them to Jason and I'll ask them, are these indeed your letters? And I'll ask him how he's doing and how he can help. And I'll ask him if he has any statements he would like to make about his current incarceration. Keep in mind that his release date is not until 2025. So this very young man has spent a long time in prison and he has a long time to go. All right, here's Jason Gerhard's first letter, and it's called On Pacifism, A Different Take, Saturday, July the 18th of 2009. So that's nearly 7 years ago. After reading Ogre's article on pacifism in June's paper, I felt the need to add my 2 cents. The question of whether violence is the solution has plagued me ever since thoughts of greater importance than who's buying the beer and how long can I hold this hit in began to materialize within the resin-coated cavity that is my brain. Okay, so starting around my 21st birthday, this important question has been bothering me. In order to understand my position, a short trip down memory lane is required. Back in September of 2007, the feds arrested me for allegedly supporting Ed and Elaine Brown. As most know, this couple in their mid-60s refused to surrender to the marshals for nearly 10 months because they were never shown the law they supposedly broke, requiring payment of the federal income tax. In the end, a jury found me guilty of all but one of the charges, which turned out to be the one that carried 30 years, resulting in Judge Signal handing down a 20-year prison sentence. Admittedly, I am no expert on revolutionary theory or tactics, but with close to 2 years in jail, plenty of time has gone to developing an idea of the path to success for the freedom fighters of the future. First off, the idea of not cooperating with your captors in any way, shape, or form, as Olga wrote, sounds wonderful on paper, yet experience had taught me that if one wants to affect the greatest number of people, solitary confinement is not the place to be. Being able to interact with the general population is necessary in order to educate others as well as learn about the system from fellow prisoners, who more often than not have more experience with it. Everyone has a story, and there is plenty to learn from others' mistakes. Soon after being sentenced in April 2008, I decided to conduct a small act of civil disobedience, not my first nor last. While at Strafford County Jail in New Hampshire, there had been a 3-on-3 white versus black fight that led to our unit being locked down 24 hours a day for several days straight. During this extended lockdown, I decided to not bring my tray to the officer manning the cart used to haul them, located about 30 feet away. Instead, the tray wound up just outside my cell door, no further. Well, the officer on duty pretty much had a nervous breakdown when he learned of my intentions not to toe the line. After telling my cellie to pick it up and being told no, he slammed our cell door and went on his way. This happened around 6 a.m. Come 8 p.m. the same day, I found myself sitting in the gang unit 120-B of Essex County Jail in Massachusetts. Located in the town of Middleton, Essex County Jail wasn't new since my first month of imprisonment had been spent there, albeit in a different unit, general population. Actually, during that initial stay, an incident occurred where a female officer freaked on me because I would not sign a SHOT incident report due to it being inaccurate. That earned me a 48-hour lockdown and a trip to Strafford County Jail less than a week later. However, this time around at Middleton, the marshals decided to label me as high escape risk, despite my never attempting an escape, which entailed having an officer with a pissed-off German Shepherd in tow following me everywhere outside the unit. A picture of me posted in the officer station in reception labeling me as such, and 120-B selected as my home, where 17 hours of each day were spent in a less than spacious two-man cell. In all honesty, though, I had a lot of fun over there considering the adverse circumstances. My cellie, an 18-year-old Crip of Cambodian descent, taught me a great deal about Asian culture, including their superstitions. Did you know that eating or combing your hair in the dark is just asking for paranormal trouble? What made it bad was when there was no ventilation nor air conditioning and our windows were locked shut. They stayed that way the whole year long on that unit. During a period when the temperature outside exceeded 90 degrees, this went on for several days until a guy had a heat stroke or faked it pretty well, and the vents were finally turned on. As one guy said, you just sit there and melt. I couldn't have put it better. Civil disobedience has its uses, but refusing to eat while strapped to a bed on suicide watch, wondering how long it is possible to stare at the blinding fluorescent lights before going blind is not an ideal circumstance. This is not to say my time in 120-B was wasted. My knowledge of gangs increased tenfold, plus it gave me the chance to label myself a gangsta, if only in my mind, and more time was available to educate myself. Yet this came as a result of less time to communicate with fellow inmates. This trade-off must be considered before deciding on a particular course of action. Considering the question of violence, I believe we must never roll it out nor solely rely upon it. But relying on one tactic or another, we are in essence showing our hand, thereby reducing the effectiveness of any action. Some will choose to contribute to the struggle by sacrificing themselves in pacifist acts that will never be forgotten, i.e. the students in Tiananmen Square, while others will decide going eye for eye with the aggressors is the best choice. Both ways have a proper time and place to be exercised. The art is deciding on which method to utilize at any particular moment. If the authorities are worried they will encounter resistance during every encounter with protesters, they will proceed with caution during each and every time, benefiting all of us, as the chances a sadistic cop will tee off on an activist head is reduced dramatically. Those who make peaceful revolution impossible make violent revolution inevitable. John F. Kennedy said, I believe we can all admit the powers that are making peaceful revolution difficult, if not impossible, as Ed and Elaine can attest to. There seems to be little choice but to at least go blow for blow with the aggressors, thereby providing an incentive for them to ease up on their abusive actions. Looking to the animal kingdom, one can see violence exhibited on a daily basis, from whales eating seals to lions eating gazelles. There is no shortage of carnage in the wild. Yes, these animals are only doing so to survive. But aren't we trying to survive as well? Deep down, what draws us to political activism, or whatever it is called, is a desire to survive first and foremost. Government has always been acknowledged as a necessary evil, but in recent times this parasite has grown to incredible proportions to the current point where we as the host are on our deathbed. Many names exist for this destroyer of life, including Zionist, Illuminati, Freemasons, the Catholic Church, the New World Order, globalist, etc. Yet, the time-proven cure to reduce this parasite to manageable size is liberty. Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged contains a scene that has always stuck with me. In it, the heroine, Dagny Taggart, is trying to free John Galt from a government torture chamber. As she makes her way to the entrance, a guard stands blocking the way. Dagny tells him to open the door or she will kill him. But he can't make a decision, citing his orders. And Rand writes what happens next. She, Dagny, who would have hesitated to fire at an animal, pulled the trigger and fired straight at the heart of a man who wanted to exist without the responsibility of consciousness. Tyrants throughout history have depended upon legions of unthinking henchmen to carry out their dastardly deeds. One is hard-pressed to find evidence that such men can be held at bay absent some form of force. The phrase, I am only doing my job, has been used time and time again to rationalize not only asinine but sometimes even deadly actions by men of no conscience. Well, it is time we the living do our job, which is nothing less than to live free or die. Jason Gerhard, and he wrote this from Fairton, but I no longer believe he is at Fairton. Okay, I have another letter written by Jason Gerhard, and let's read that. This is on taxes. Okay. Taxes by Jason Gerhard. Over 7 years ago, I was arrested by the This is written on April the 13th of 2015. The previous letter was posted in 2009, so I assume that's when it was written. But this letter was written on April the 13th of 2015, so Jason has been in prison for quite a long time when this was written. Over 7 years ago, I was arrested by the federal government for my part in assisting a New Hampshire couple during their 10-month standoff with the U.S. Marshals. Their crime? Challenging the legitimacy of the federal income tax. While many have since questioned my sanity and intelligence for partaking in such a suicide mission, I am still convinced that the surest and least violent way to rein in our uncontrollable government is to cut off its money supply. Otherwise, we are essentially holding a protest sign in one hand, decrying various government excesses, all the while giving the same government $100 bills with the other. Let them march all they want, so long as they pay their taxes. Alexander Haig, Ronald Reagan's Secretary of State, 1982. Yes, many have tried to raise this issue before and have failed. Yet it is not a failing proposition if attempted from a slightly different angle. What if instead of going at the behemoth IRS alone or in small groups, we enlisted the assistance of our local sheriff? Richard Mack has written extensively about the rarely exercised, albeit quite real powers of our elected sheriffs possess. Mack writes about his inspiring win against the federal government 20 years ago in the foreword to his brief pamphlet, The Victory for State Sovereignty. Quote, on February 28, 1994, while serving as sheriff on Graham County, Arizona, I filed a lawsuit on federal district court against the federal government Clinton administration to stop the gun control and destruction of state sovereignty associated with the Brady Bill. A few weeks later, Sheriff J. Prince from Ravalli County filed a similar lawsuit in Montana. Ultimately, 5 other sheriffs from Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Vermont, and Wyoming joined this section. 7 sheriffs out of nearly 3,100 nationwide stood and fought the United States Goliath Clinton administration. Why would 7 small-town sheriffs do such a thing against their own government? On the other hand, if it was the right thing to do, why were there only 7 sheriffs who took such a stand? Imagine if we attempted a similar strategy concerning the federal income tax. There are plenty of people who are better versed than I am when it comes to the various nuances of how the federal income tax is not applicable to the vast majority of Americans, was never properly ratified, etc. With your help, I propose we have our elected sheriffs present 3 of the most simply, clearest, most poignant questions to the IRS for immediate response. By keeping the number of questions limited, we eliminate any plausible excuses from the IRS about needing more time. Along with the aforementioned questions, it also needs to be made clear that failure to respond will result in that year's income tax payment being put into a trust fund where it will sit until such time as the questions are fully answered. The following year, 75% of the supposedly required payment will be deposited in the trust fund. A year later, 50%. Come the 4th and final year, only 25% will be deposited. Ideally, the sheriff and at least 50 residents of the county would partake in this redress of grievances. At a minimum, the sheriff must make it known that he will not assist in any attempt to arrest the individuals who are withholding their payments until such time as he can be shown there is a legitimate basis for the tax. The beauty of this idea is that by continuing to file the IRS forms, yet placing the money in a trust fund, we eliminate the belief that we're trying to avoid paying our fair share. Also, by dragging this out over 4 years, it eliminates even the most ignorant person from believing that there is a legitimate basis for the income tax and that the IRS simply needs more time. Some will write this off as crazy without even stopping to think about it. The rantings of a prisoner, they'll say. The truth is that the time is right to deliver the coup de grace to the scandal-ridden IRS monster once and for all. When you get down to it, the IRS is the government's attack dog. Far too long we have plied them with treats, our hard-earned wages, in the hopes that he won't bite, audit, and imprison us. Aren't you tired of it? If we can't even find one sheriff with a backbone, then someone needs to run on this very issue. Attempting to prosecute someone in relation to this would be a nightmare scenario for the feds. The government and vampires are alike in that they both suck our blood and they both hate sunlight. Bringing this issue forward would shine a devastating light onto the fraudulent IRS. Justice Brandeis said it best. Sunlight is the best disinfectant, 1913. For those who claim the risk is simply too great, do me a favor if you would. Go home, turn on the TV, and put away all those pretensions that you're fighting the good fight. No one will criticize you for giving up, for the simple fact is you never even began. The hardest thing in the world to understand is the income tax. Albert Einstein, by Jason Gerhard, and his prison number is 20229-045. He's currently incarcerated at Federal Correctional Institution in Allenwood Low in White Deer, Pennsylvania. So that'll give you an idea into the mind of this young man that got caught up in the Ed Brown and Ed and Elaine Brown standoff. And I suggest that we take the time and write him a letter. The list is growing very large, isn't it? The Lord is opening our eyes to all of these brothers and sisters in prison. And what's the Bible say? The harvest is great and the laborers are few. We have a lot of work to do, and we need more laborers. We need more people willing to work for the kingdom of God. And I say we write him a letter and ask this guy if he's a Christian. Ask him if he believes in the Lord Jesus Christ. Ask him, what we can do to help him. Take care and God bless.